Good morning. This is David Rasky, Sales Director for VoiceWare at PhoneSuite. I'll be moderating, but our presenter, and I'd like to introduce our presenter, is Frank Melville, the President of PhoneSuite. And Frank brings a unique set of background and talents to this in that he grew up in the hotel business. His family still owns hotels in Colorado, and he's deeply involved in that. Frank began buying technology, telecommunications products for hotels quite a long time ago, over 20 years ago. He's a successful businessman, now the president of this company, his second company, and he has a master's degree in electrical engineering. Thereby, he covers all the bases. And now, turn it to Frank.
Very good, David. Thank you very much. So let's get going. I'm going to talk a little bit about what we've done in the past here. We've done this will make three cost analysis webinars. The first one in September, we looked at SIP versus analog phones in guest rooms, and that is recorded and on the PhoneSuite channel on YouTube. And we also did in early October, a hosted versus premise-based PBX solutions analysis looking at cost. That's also on the web under the YouTube PhoneSuite channel. And the thing we're doing today is we're looking at SIP versus traditional trunking, especially in hotels. So let's get going with that. The approach we're going to take today is to start out by looking at what exactly is SIP trunking, look at a definition of what SIP trunking is, because we're not sure everybody in the audience understands SIP trunking. Want to make sure everyone's up to speed on that, and look at how it's implemented. So really quick 2-3 minute tutorial on that. And then look very briefly at the pitfalls or the gotchas that people have experienced and our potential problems with SIP trunking out there. And then do just a simple cost comparison, and it is very simple because it's pretty straightforward when you do the actual cost comparison, and chat about approaches with that. So what is SIP trunking? This is from the Wikipedia, and oh my God, really? Want me to read this to you? SIP trunking is Voice over Internet Protocol, VoIP, and streaming media service based on the Session Initiation Protocol, SIP, footnote 1, by which Internet telephony service providers, ITSPs, yada, yada, yada. Now this is really complicated here, and if you notice, look at all those things that are hyperlinked, underlined, meaning that, hey, chances are you want more information on this too. Here's what SIP trunking is. SIP trunking is sending and receiving phone calls over an Internet connection, and in parentheses, instead of over traditional telephone company lines. So SIP trunking is simply using your Internet to send and receive phone calls instead of buying regular phone company lines. And let's take a look at exactly how it works. In this diagram here, we've got our hotel here in this box here with a PBX in it that's driving regular digital or analog phones, and this is going to be a hybrid PBX, so it can drive SIP phones as well. This is not important. It's just important to know that the phone system is connected to your LAN is connected to the Internet, and it drives all these phones. And when you make a call from any phone, the PBX looks at the number you dialed and passes it out the building up to your phone company over T1, PRI, or regular copper lines. And the phone company looks at the digits you dialed, and it finds a place to route it to anywhere in the world. And it hops it to another telephone company that's close to wherever you called, and then the phone goes from there to the business that you've called or the person that you've called. Pretty simple. SIP trunking is not a huge change over this. If we look at SIP trunking, same basic principle applies. You pick up a phone in the building, you dial a number, your hotel's PBX looks at the number you dialed, and instead of routing it to the phone company through phone lines, it routes it out the Internet to your ITSP, or Internet Telephony Service Provider, and that ITSP's soft switch looks at the number you dialed and finds the phone company located closest to whoever it is you called, makes a direct Internet connection to that phone company, or as close as you can get to that phone company, and the rest of the call goes out the regular phone lines to, or the cell service to the person or business that you called. The big deal here with the SIP trunking is, in theory, everything here, which might take you thousands of miles before you get actually to the telco, is free, or at least no extra cost over what it is you're paying as a base fee for your Internet, in theory. And if you look back at the previous slide with traditional trunking, you are paying a monthly fee and service for all of this path. With SIP trunking, you're using the Internet and the fact that you already have a connection to get as close to the destination as possible for quote-unquote free, and then you're only paying for that last little bit. So that is SIP trunking versus traditional trunking, how it's actually implemented. Again, if you have questions, please feel free to type them into the questions box. We have someone transcribing those, and I'll answer them at the very end of this little session. All right, so what are the potential pitfalls or the actual pitfalls that we're seeing with SIP trunking? Well, the first thing that must be addressed is that emergency or 911 registration is not automatic. When you sign up for a phone line with your phone company, your address is automatically entered into the E91 database, and so no matter what, if you pick up one of those lines and dial 911 or one of your guests or staff does, it automatically knows where to send the emergency vehicles. In the case of SIP trunking, because they can be virtually anywhere and there's no direct mandated correlation or physical connection, I should say, someone has to register your address with your SIP trunks. That can be done by you, but nowadays the ITSP are doing a very good job of getting that registered. But it is crucial. It must be done. The second is, I have here the relative dependability of the transport infrastructure. What the heck does that mean? Well, what that means is that whatever path you're using to route the call, its dependability comes into play as to how good the quality and dependability of the calls are. And in parentheses, I have here, if you lose your LAN or your internet, you can't make or receive calls. So if you're using SIP trunking and even your router goes down, you will not be able to make or receive phone calls. If your internet service goes down, you will not be able to make phone calls. And that needs to be addressed and taken into consideration. What we're seeing is that as time goes on, the gear in your building is becoming as dependable as your old PBX gear, and the service provided by your ITSP and your internet service provider are becoming also as dependable as the phone company. In fact, they're kind of merging. Phone companies are becoming ITSPs, and ITSPs are becoming phone companies. So that is not becoming as much of an issue as it once was, but it is something you need to consider. And the last and most important is that any piece of this data path, the path that your phone calls are taking, that gets obstructed in any way can cause poor call quality. You can do something about this ahead of time. But often, people who try SIP trunking out don't address this, don't even think about it, and that becomes the biggest cause of complaints that we see. And I'll give you a little example here. I want you to see this. Back to our little SIP trunking diagram. In here is our call path up through our LAN, our network in our hotel, out to the internet to the ITSP, and then from them, and they bounce it over to the local telco. We can't control all of this, obviously, but we can control this, and people are not controlling this. A perfect example, it's 7 p.m., your guests are all checked in, they're coming back from supper, and they start streaming Netflix. And when they start streaming Netflix, if you don't have any equipment here or your router isn't set up to do what's called traffic shaping, your guests can hog up all of your internet bandwidth, so that when you make a phone call, the bandwidth you really need for that phone call just isn't there, and the phone call sounds terrible. That's what I'm talking about, this SIP trunking obstruction. That can be addressed if you do SIP trunking. If you choose to do any kind of SIP trunking at all, please work with your own IT staff or the IT people at your SIP trunking provider, whoever it is that takes care of your IPPBX and your LAN, and make sure you are doing traffic shaping, an edge router. There's lots of different equipment that can handle this. But if you don't do it, if you just do it like you do at home and just have a router to the internet, you no longer have any control over who gets how much of the bandwidth. And there's a much broader topic here that we're seeing addressed quite a bit now in general hotel internet service, especially for guest internet access, in terms of traffic shaping and controlling how much bandwidth your guests can take. Different topic, but it is all part of that same equation. Very important. Okay, so now let's look at the real cost savings, and I think I promised to do about 15 minutes here. I think we might actually hit that. Real cost savings is simple. If you look at averages, if you look at what's out there today, these numbers aren't fixed, of course, but when we see it just using ballpark numbers, the average SIP trunk's about half the cost of a regular trunk, so about $20 per SIP trunk versus about $40 per regular analog trunk, and maybe $400 to $700 for a PRI, which in most hotels' cases is way more than you need. So there really is cost savings there, but it goes past that. In many cases, the usage rates, or in all cases really the usage rates, that per minute cost, which is the cost of transporting the portion of the call that's not on the internet to the destination, those per minute costs are usually lower in SIP trunking, and they might be included as an unlimited use. For example, a service provider we like is offering $27 per month per trunk, and it includes all of the U.S. and Canada inbound and outbound calls that you can make. International calls are about half price. So half price and half price, sometimes half price and everything included. Just look at your phone bill. If your average cost per trunk, including everything, is more than $27, SIP trunking can definitely save you money. And if it's more than $20, SIP trunking can probably save you money. And I know that's the title of this talk. We want to bring you up to speed on things, but really this is the meat of it. There's one other really cool thing in the hotel industry. And with SIP trunking, we have something called bursting. Let's just say you've signed up for 6 SIP trunks for your 100-room hotel because you know that nobody ever makes more than 4 or 5 simultaneous phone calls. 6 will be enough. Bursting allows a temporary use of more than 6 trunks. If you're a brand, you probably have a requirement for your 100 rooms of more than 6 trunks. Well, if you purchase 6 SIP trunks with bursting, you can meet the brand requirement, meaning 10 simultaneous calls could occur when needed, but you're only paying for 6 on a monthly basis, and you only pay for those extra 4 if they're ever bursted into or ever actually used. And this can save you a ton of extra money. I love this concept for hotels. It seems to me like it was made specifically for hotels. It was not, of course, but when you look at the number of trunks a hotel actually needs versus the number of trunks your brand is telling you you should have, the discrepancy is quite large, and we have actually data from our customers that shows that to be true. So I'll put this up on the next screen as well, but we're happy to look at your phone bill with you or for you and just give you an idea of what you might be able to save if you switched to SIP trunking, successfully switched to SIP trunking, meaning take everything into consideration, and we do everything needed to make sure you get good, clear calls. So please call us or email our sales department. It's simple, sales@phonesuite.com, and we'll do a simple cost analysis with you. So what are the conclusions of all this? Well, SIP trunking is not for everyone, no question about it. Anyone who's got terrible, inconsistent internet connections, anyone who's got a lack of control of their actual internet traffic, those small hotels or those hotels who went down to Best Buy, bought a few pieces of equipment, set up their own internet, you're not going to be successful with SIP trunking. You're going to have quality issues. But we can address those. Those can be addressed by people who know what they're doing, configuring a LAN and some traffic shaping controls. Especially in rural areas, they may still be a problem, and you should know that SIP trunking versus regular trunking, those costs we threw out there are just averages. It varies widely based on region and based on the availability of real good quality internet in your area. So some rural people may be in trouble there. No question, SIP trunks will save you money. If you get it done right, they'll save you money, and you'll still have great call quality. Maybe lots of money. To me, it only makes sense. We're shifting to SIP trunking right here at our factory. We found a SIP trunking provider we really like. They seem to have the quality of the connection under control, and we're working with us to make sure that we have settings in our systems here in our LAN to make sure that the voice traffic isn't impeded by someone downloading a large file. And it seems to be working really, really well. In fact, I'm talking to you over it right now. My connection into this conference is through that SIP trunking. And the last thing is that this bursting really seems to be perfect for the reality of what hotels need in terms of number of trunks versus the brand requirement stated need for trunks in hotels. And again, please call us or email our sales department if you would like us to look at your phone bill with you or talk about this in depth anymore. 800-245-9933, one for sales, one for phone suite sales, and boom, you're talking to someone who can help you out. And that's it. We're going to take some questions now. And Angela, if you have any questions, please run them over to me, and we will answer those. In the meantime, I want to thank everybody for taking your time to come see this. Also remind you that we do have all of these webinars abbreviated somewhat. We cut out some of the chatter, and we We throw stuff on the internet, and they're on our YouTube channel. Look for The Phone Suite or just Phone Suite on YouTube, and we've got training, promotional, testimonial, and webinar videos there. Okay, here's my first question. Can you have both SIP trunks and regular trunks at the same time? Yes, you can. In fact, I had a slide prepared that I don't have in here, but it's got both the SIP and the traditional trunks at the same time in it. Yes, you can use both. It depends on the capabilities of your switch, but yes, you can use both. And we do see a lot of hotels, in fact, some very large national brands who have shown us a spec that shows SIP trunking, but with a couple of copper lines as backup, just in case the internet fails. They'll still be able to make and receive at least emergency calls. Second question, when do you think the stability of the internet will equal the telephone companies? And I assume you mean the stability or the dependability of phone company lines. And I think I addressed this a little bit. Yeah, they're getting better and better. The internet is still not perceived as being as stable and consistent as the telephone company lines, and rightly so. There are still some problems, but just think about it. When was the last time your hotel's internet went completely down? When was the last time your phone lines went completely down? Can you live with that? If so, SIP trunking might be good for you. Let's see. Who are some providers that you have worked with? Oh my gosh, we've worked with a lot of providers. There's a guy here named Aaron Bailey, and if you who is our IOC officer, Interoperability Certification Officer, and he tests and certifies as compatible lots of SIP trunking providers. Many of them are listed on our website. New ones are added every day. We are working with a couple of companies that are offline. Greg and others, we'd certainly tell you about. If you chat with your salesperson, I want to make this sort of not specific to any carrier, but we're happy to chat with you offline. And there's some that they're very inexpensive and very cool looking and very simple to set up, but their quality isn't quite as good as others, and we'll tell you about those as well. One more, how can we avoid obstruction on our LAN and internet? I think I addressed that, but there's something called an edge router. That is an additional router or piece of equipment that, like a firewall, but not, that it might be combined into your router or into your firewall that allows the traffic, the packets that are going back and forth on the internet to be examined for what kind of packet it is. And if it's voice, it gets first priority. And if it's someone, if it's somebody that downloading a video or on BitTorrent or something, it can do a lot of things about that. Not just make sure the voice is got the best quality, but it can also do more things like making sure one guest isn't hogging all the internet from other guests, and making sure, obviously, that the voice traffic gets first shot. And there are other clever things that some people are doing that I don't even know about. But there is a lot that can be done there. Any other questions? Those are good questions.
Couple of overheads ago, talk about $27 for a SIP trunk per month. That's the lower 48 in the U.S., so it's the U.S. plus Canada, which is actually an awful lot of traffic and an awful lot of business between the two countries. And obviously other countries, Mexico, the Caribbean, can be added, but that's at a higher cost, and that's to be negotiated with your ITSP and your SIP trunking provider.
Yeah, and that is all you can eat in those places. You can still reach the rest of the world. It's just you pay a little extra per minute versus free per minute. That's a good point, David. Really good point. Okay, the last question was, do you recommend a dedicated T1 or a cable circuit? What I recommend is solid business-level internet access, whether it's some bonded T1s or cable, business-level cable. And cable's a little bit iffy just because as cable providers become more and more successful and do more and more businesses in an area, the total bandwidth for that whole sort of neighborhood gets aggregated at some point versus fiber and DSL, which is dedicated. But I recommend, rather than saying a T1 or cable, I'd say dedicated business where upload and download speeds are at least 5 megabit. And if you've got the same internet service feeding your guests their internet, you want to get up toward 20, and we even see some brands with 100 rooms wanting 50 megabits, and that's all to do with how much the guests are using the internet. A phone call, by the way, is only about 80 kilobits per second of your bandwidth. It's tiny. You can fit 12 phone calls in a 1 megabit of your of your internet service, but it's got to be both directions, up and down. So I recommend neither. I recommend business, quality, dependable. Hope that answers your question. Scott, feel free to call me or us if you want more details on that. Okay, I'm going to wrap it up, David, or you want to wrap it up?
I think you just did. That's great. Our information is there. Call or write in, and look forward to working with you all.
Thank you, everybody, for attending.